Welcome to Ars Libri, an everyman's journey through Western literature, where we explore the literary arts book by book, reading, retelling, and reclaiming our rich heritage. If you're enjoying this content, please consider supporting the show by subscribing at arslibri.substack.com. The Tortoise and the Hare. A hare was making fun of the tortoise one day for being so slow. "Do you ever get anywhere?" he asked with a mocking laugh. "Yes," replied the tortoise, "and I get there sooner than you think. I'll run you a race and prove it." The hare was much amused at the idea of running a race with the tortoise, but for the fun of the thing he agreed. So the fox, who had consented to act as judge, marked the distance and started the runners off. The hare was soon far out of sight, and to make the tortoise feel very deeply how ridiculous it was for him to try to race with a hare, he lay down beside the course to take a nap until the tortoise should catch up. The tortoise, meanwhile, going slowly but steadily, and after some time, passed the place where the hare was sleeping. But the hare slept on very peacefully, and when at last he did wake up, the tortoise was near the goal. The hare now ran his swiftest, but he could not overtake the tortoise in time. The Fox and the Grapes. A fox one day spied a beautiful bunch of grapes hanging from a vine trained along the branches of a tree. The grapes seemed ready to burst with juice, and the fox's mouth watered as he gazed longingly at them. The bunch hung from a high branch, and the fox had to jump for it. The first time he jumped, he missed by a long way. So he walked off a short distance and took a running leap at it, only to fall short once more. Again and again he tried, but in vain. Now he sat down and looked at the grapes in disgust. "What a fool I am," he said. "Here I am wearing myself out for a bunch of sour grapes that are not worth gaping for." And he walked off very scornfully. The Ants and the Grasshopper. One bright day in late autumn, a family of ants were bustling about in the warm sunshine, drying out the grain they had stored up during the summer, when a starving grasshopper, his fiddle under his arm, came up and humbly begged for a bite to eat. "What?" cried the ants in surprise. "Haven't you stored anything away for the winter? What in the world were you doing all last summer?" "I didn't have time to store up any food," whined the grasshopper. "I was so busy making music that before I knew it, the summer was gone." The ants shrugged their shoulders in disgust. "Making music, were you?" they cried. "Very well, now dance!" And they turned their backs on the grasshopper and went on with their work. The Shepherd Boy and the Wolf. A shepherd boy tended his master's sheep near a dark forest not far from the village. Soon he found pasture life very dull. All he could do was amuse himself, talking to his dog or playing on his pipe. One day, as he was watching the sheep in the quiet forest, thinking of what he would do if he saw a wolf, he thought of a plan to amuse himself. His master told him that he should call for help if a wolf were to attack the flock, and the villagers would come and drive it away. So now, though he had not seen a wolf, he ran to the village shouting at the top of his voice, "Wolf! Wolf!" As he expected, the villagers who heard the cry dropped their work and ran in great excitement to the pasture. But when they got there, they found the boy doubled up with laughter at the trick he had played on them. A few days later, the shepherd boy again shouted, "Wolf! Wolf!" Again the villagers ran to help him, only to be laughed at again. Then one evening, as the sun was setting behind the forest and the shadows were creeping over the pasture, a wolf really did spring from the bush and fall upon the sheep. In terror, the boy ran to the village shouting, "Wolf! Wolf!" But the villagers heard the cry and yet did not run to help him as they had before. "He cannot fool us again," they said. The wolf killed a great many of the boy's sheep and then slipped away into the forest. The Lion and the Mouse. A lion lay asleep in the forest, his great head resting on his paws. A timid little mouse came upon him unexpectedly, and in her fright and haste to get away, ran across the lion's nose. Roused from his nap, the lion laid his huge paw on the tiny little creature to kill her. "Spare me," begged the poor mouse. "Please let me go, and someday I'll surely repay you." The lion was amused to think how a mouse could ever help him, but he was generous and finally let the mouse go. Some days later, while stalking his prey in the forest, the lion was caught in a hunter's net. Unable to free himself, he filled the forest with his angry roaring. The mouse knew the voice and quickly found the lion struggling in the net. Running to one of the great ropes that bound him, she gnawed at it until it parted, and the lion was soon set free. "You laughed when I said I would repay you," said the mouse. "Now you see that even a mouse can help a lion." The wolf in sheep's clothing. A certain wolf could not get enough to eat because of the watchfulness of the shepherds. But one night he found sheepskin that had been cast aside and forgotten. The next day, dressed in that skin, the wolf strolled into the pasture with the sheep. Soon a little lamb was following him about and was quickly led away to slaughter. That evening the wolf entered the fold with the flock, but it happened that the shepherd took a fancy for mutton broth that very evening, and picking up a knife went to the fold. There the first he laid hands on and killed was the wolf. The goose and the golden egg. There was once a countryman who possessed the most wonderful goose you can imagine. For every day when he visited the nest, the goose had laid a beautiful, glittering golden egg. The countryman took the eggs to market and soon began to get rich. But it was not long before he grew impatient with the goose because she gave him only one golden egg a day. He was not getting rich fast enough. Then one day, after he finished counting his money, the idea came to him that he could get all the golden eggs at once by killing the goose and cutting it open. But when the deed was done, not a single golden egg did he find, and his precious goose was dead. Town mouse and country mouse. A town mouse once visited a relative who lived in the country. For lunch, the country mouse served wheat stalks, roots, and acorns with a dash of cold water for drink. The town mouse ate very sparingly, nibbling a little of this and a little of that, and by her manner making it very plain that she ate the simple food only to be polite. After the meal, the friends had a long talk, or rather, the town mouse talked about her life in the city while the country mouse listened. Then they went to bed in a cozy nest in the hedgerow and slept in quiet and comfort until morning. In her sleep, the country mouse dreamed she was a town mouse with all the luxuries and delights of the city life that her friend had described for her. So the next day, when the town mouse asked the country mouse to go home with her to the city, she gladly said yes. When they reached the mansion in which the town mouse lived, they found on the table in the dining room the leavings of a very fine banquet. There were sweetmeats and jellies, pastries, delicious cheeses, indeed, the most tempting foods that a mouse can imagine. But just as the country mouse was about to nibble a dainty bit of pastry, she heard a cat mew loudly and scratch at the door. In great fear, the mice scurried to a hiding place, where they lay quite still for a long time, hardly daring to breathe. When at last they ventured back to the feast, the door opened suddenly, and in came the servants to clear the table, followed by the house dog. The country mouse stopped in the town mouse's den only long enough to pick up her carpet bag and umbrella. "You may have luxuries and dainties that I certainly do not," she said as she hurried away, "but I prefer my plain food and simple life in the country with the peace and security that go with it." Aesop's Fables. The first thing that came to my mind when I thought about this is it seems really simplistic and we don't need to talk about it. However, Aesop's Fables are everywhere. Have you ever heard the phrase, "Don't count your chickens before they're hatched"? Or "Don't count your eggs before they're chickens"? What does it go?
Just don't count either one.
Don't
You'll
count
be
them.
fine.
What? Sorry, Aesop. Okay. A wolf in sheep's clothing. Sour grapes.
Mm-hmm.
Sour grapes.
Necessity is the mother of invention.
Killing the goose that laid the golden eggs. Taking the lion's share of something. Or the boy that cried wolf. These are all examples of household expressions today, but they're phrases that come from Aesop's Fables.
Yeah, I think that source is very much lost. Just like people generally don't have much idea of fairy tales or of nursery rhymes. Mm-hmm. Like there's phrases and things that people might know, but people don't know nursery rhymes or fairy tales the way that they did.
Yeah.
Like we might still have some lingering expressions, but a lot of times, like if you were to ask for the source or for the context, a lot of people just won't know.
Yeah.
You know where it comes from.
Yeah, and these are thousands of years old. They're phrases that aren't just in our vocabulary, they're in the way we think. We say these things as though they're truism, little phrases that are truisms, and it's just understood like, oh yeah, the boy that cried wolf, oh yeah.
Right.
But this is something that people said long ago that have been woven into our habits and our minds and our ways of thinking for a long time. So Aesop's Fables, really quickly, they're basically brief stories with characters, action, and conclusions. They're real quick. They're stripped down versions of stories, and they use animals. And this is called anthropomorphism. We'll talk more about that in a bit, but basically it's animals that embody human traits, like a fox being clever, or a lion being brave, or a chicken being afraid. And something that you brought up is that allows for clear moral illustrations.
Right, yeah, it allows for objectivity because you're able to see it from a distance. You're not worried about if that applies to me or you because it's separate. It's like, oh, it's the animals that are doing these silly things, not me, of course.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it allows for objectivity. So the lesson in the fable is more easily understood.
Right.
Because it's not a human being, it's not a man, it's not a woman. Well, some of them are, but usually it's not. Yeah. So, yeah, then there's also dual lessons with Aesop's Fables. Sometimes they're positive examples, like behaviors to emulate, like persistence in the tortoise and the hare. And sometimes there are negative examples, behaviors to avoid, like greed in the goose that laid a golden egg. But what's interesting, in the original stories, there wasn't this moral at the end that told you what to think. It just left it open-ended. You had to think for yourself when you read the story. So sometimes there was moral ambiguity in Aesop's Fables, in the originals, because they didn't have the endings. It wasn't a rigid moral system that was just given to you. The fables reflected a real-world complexity that we face and the contradictions that we face. Sometimes situations, just a little nuance changes how you should act.
Right. That's like in, I think, Proverbs. Yes, we see this in the Proverbs where you're to answer the fool according to his folly, but at the same time, you're not to cast pearls before swine. So context matters, you know.
Yeah. So the original stories don't end with obvious moral lessons, which I like that. It makes you think for yourself in a deep way. You have to actually contemplate this stuff. And that brings up another point, which is people often think today, oh, this is for kids. But originally it wasn't for children. First of all, children couldn't read back then, and they didn't have tons of books for everybody. It was orally passed down for a long time, but people began to compile this in the 200s, 100s BC, and then in the 80s as well. And it was men compiling it. People, adults, took this very seriously, and we can talk more about that. But the pedagogical value of the fables, they teach moral instruction, but they do it in an interesting way. So the problem with teaching moral instruction is that it usually happens when children do something wrong.
Yeah.
And if you only correct children and teach them what is right when they do wrong, there's this negative association that occurs, a negative reinforcement. Morality begins to be linked with guilt and shame and punishment. And that can actually deter ethical development. If the child only detects what's good when he feels shame. Do you see? That's bad. I mean, you can train dogs like this too, to not do something because they feel bad about it. So you want to teach children righteousness, virtue, good behavior, proper ways of being human, but not when they're doing wrong, or at least not only when they're doing wrong. You want to do it when it's like a neutral situation. Right.
That's like what you do in the mornings when you're reading to the girls. You're reading them the Proverbs, and it's not because they've done anything wrong.
Yeah.
It's just because this is part of their moral instruction.
Right. So direct moral teaching, though, here's another problem. Direct moral teaching is often unappealing. This is humorously illustrated in Pride and Prejudice, where Mr. Collins, for like all the people are at a dinner party, and after the dinner party, what do we do this evening? Mr. Collins suggests reading Fordyce's sermons to young women. It's like a volume series of sermons. And he gets 3 pages in, and when Mrs. Bennet or somebody interrupts him and stops him, it's just super boring. Nobody wants to hear a lecture on morals.
Yeah.
So how do we teach? If you can't do it, if you're not supposed to do it only when they mess up, and nobody wants to hear it just straight, don't want to hear moral teaching, how do you do it? Well, fables are an effective teaching tool for this. We didn't just discover it. Like if you're thinking right now, that's profound. I didn't make this up. Aesop made it up. Maybe not even Aesop. This is in the Bible too. But they're engaging stories, and they're really short, extremely short, like short enough for a child or for a human who's busy. The fables can captivate adults. It can captivate children's minds. It makes a moral lesson sort of enjoyable, sometimes funny. And they're brief and therefore memorable.
Yeah, irony is often a factor in the stories. It's like the animals or the characters are going for a certain result, but oftentimes the opposite happens. And then that's the joke,
Yeah. I mentioned in the Bible, the Proverbs do this. You said that. They're short, memorable teachings. But more than that, the Proverbs sometimes have fable-like qualities, like Proverbs 6:6 says, "Go to the ant, O sluggard."
Yeah.
And learn. And in fact, I read that this morning just because we're going through the Proverbs right now. But they're proactive instructions, basically. That's what the Proverbs are. And fables, likewise, emphasize teaching wisdom before mistakes occur. You can learn from the mistakes of others. That's basically what the fables are. Learn from the mistakes of others. And in that sense, it's sort of like a science, like a moral science. You're learning, we made this mistake before, let's not do it again. And if you don't teach people that, it's basically like, imagine if you wanted to be an engineer and you started out by not studying anyone who's ever studied engineering before you. You're just starting from scratch. You're setting yourself back thousands of years.
Right.
In science, in progress, in your ability to produce good things for humanity. Well, what if you're doing that morally? The way to do that morally is just don't look at any book written before your time. I mean, don't read anything. Don't read the Proverbs. Don't read Aesop's fables. These people have developed ideas and through human experience and have written them down in coded, memorable ways. Why would you not read that?
I think that they can also be used in hindsight. So you're saying that they're used to prevent misconduct, but this reminds me of Nathan, the prophet, when he goes to David. He uses a story, a short story, to illustrate to David what he has done. And I don't think it would have gone so well or so smoothly had Nathan just straight up, confronted David with his sin. But like we were saying earlier, it makes it objective. Like David couldn't unsee it. He was like, it's clear. I understand what I've done, what has happened. And I think that the story was very powerful in showing David that.
That's good. That also makes me think of the adult use or the adult value of fables. Immediately people think, oh, this is for children. Let me give it to my child. No, this is for you. And in the Greco-Roman world, education explicitly used Aesop's fables for grammar, rhetoric, and moral lessons for older students. Today we think of students, they were like 8-year-old people. No, they were late teens, 20-year-olds studying Aesop's fables, writing them down, memorizing them. In fact, Plato wrote the book Phaedo, which talks about Socrates' death, like his discussions before he died. So he's waiting to die, he's waiting to be executed. And it talks about how he had memorized many of Aesop's fables and would recite them to himself and reformulate them to himself as he's giving these discourses on morality and the life of the soul after death, as he's waiting to be executed. So on death row, essentially, Socrates is reciting Aesop's fables. That's heavy. That's serious. It's not just an adult who read these as a kid. He still has them in his mind, and he's thinking about them as he's going to be executed.
Yeah, at face value, they might seem simplistic and childish, but they really got some deep psychology in there.
They do. They do.
Yeah.
Aristotle advocated for fables in education too. I think that's something you said earlier.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Bible. Jesus used parables and images of nature. But later on, when in the late Middle Ages and the Renaissance, Europeans began to recover these classic texts, some of the first men to translate these works translated Aesop. For instance, there's a guy named Lorenzo Valla. He's a famous classical educator in Italy in the 1400s. He translated Homer, Herodotus, Thucydides, and Aesop. Like Aesop was there with those great guys. That's how important this stuff was to these people. They didn't think, oh, this is silly, like Mother Goose nursery rhymes and things. It was serious. In fact, Martin Luther, the reformer, in the 1500s, translated Aesop's fables and encouraged his fellow ministers to do the same and to use them in sermons. There are 700 fables. There's 700 fables. The version we have is really great. It's from Kala or Kalkala or something like that. It's a deluxe edition, leather-bound, blue. There's like a bunny on the front of it. It's beautiful. It has 400 and something.
Yeah, I think that not all of them, though, are Aesop's.
Right. There are collections that it kind of snowballed over the years. People started throwing in their own.
Right.
Yeah. So some of them are not from Aesop, and they just attribute them to like Aesop's fables because he kind of supposedly started this genre. So we just picked a few of them here, and we'll talk about them, not hundreds. One, everybody knows, Tortoise and the Hare.
Right.
The Tortoise and the Hare. It's a story of a slow tortoise that beats a boastful rabbit in a race. And the lesson is persistence. Steady effort triumphs over overconfidence. And there have been so many cartoons about this, so many moral lessons throughout the ages. I mean, this comes up again and again and again in your life. There's The Fox and the Sour Grapes, which I think is interesting because it's a little less known, but it's still a famous one. Basically, a fox sees some grapes high up, and he tries to jump and reach them, and he can't. And because he can't, he walks off and says, oh, those grapes are unripe and sour anyway. And so the moral is that people devalue what they can't attain. Sour grapes attitude.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because humans tend to rationalize failure or they rationalize envy. If something is better than what they have or better than they themselves, they'll look at it and criticize it and try to lower it.
I didn't want it anyway.
I didn't want it anyway. That's right. This happens in middle school cliques a lot, little like cliques of girls or boys or something. And a new girl comes to class or a new boy comes to class who's better in some way than the others or attracts the attention of the others. And the group that's there will just start and criticizing because that person has something that we don't. But it happens to men too. I was telling you earlier that one of our friends has a Ferrari and the rest of our friends were talking and saying, well, you know, who wants a Ferrari? I mean, that's not a car. I mean, it's low to the ground and it makes a lot of noise and it's terrible gas mileage and it has no storage. I mean, who wants that? Now my Honda Civic, now that's a car. You know, that thing gets 50 miles to the gallon. It's got a great trunk. And it's kind of funny, but the idea is there that when there's a better man that walks in the room, or a better woman that walks in the room, adults will look at that person and criticize them to their friends or to their spouses even, to sort of put that person beneath them. And it's a subtle way of admitting that you feel threatened by that person or you feel that you are less than that person, so you have to lower them to bring them down to your level or beneath you. And it's something that we shouldn't do. If you can't reach the grapes, just go on and admit it.
Yeah, that's funny. You were saying that you have to lower them. You know, it's like the grapes are too high, they're out of reach.
Yeah.
And the person is higher.
Right.
You know, that's funny.
That's right. There's another fable where a fox steps into a moving river and he gets swept away in it. And everybody's watching. The other animals are watching. And he's taken off his guard, but quickly he just starts swimming around in the water, acting like he meant to do that. Right.
That's every kid on the playground.
Yeah,
I mean,
totally.
They've all done that. You know, they go to do this trick and everyone's watching and they totally flop. And they're like, I meant to do that.
I meant to do that.
Of course.
That's right. There's the fable of the ant and the grasshopper. Basically, a hardworking ant prepares for winter, while the carefree grasshopper does not. And the one survives and the other starves. And that's exactly the proverb 6:6 that I just read.
Right.
It's exactly the same thing, which makes you wonder, did Aesop run into this in the Old Testament text? I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's exactly it, the same thing.
And didn't they make that a Disney movie?
What is it?
A Bug's Life. I think that's the one. There was
Life?
another movie, I think, called Ants or something, but there's one.
Okay.
It was the old,
That's interesting.
We were kids. A Bug's Life, yeah. It's
you can take these little stories
Yeah, they're working hard. They're storing up all this food, and it shows like all of the work
Right.
year long that they are putting into this.
Yeah.
And then here come the grasshoppers, and it sounds like helicopters, like
my
an
goodness.
army coming to just take their food, just bully them.
Yeah.
It's kind of intimidating in the movie. But it's exactly this proverb or this fable
Yeah.
made into,
It's
developed.
blueberries for Sal.
What?
Blueberries for Sal. They have to pick blueberries to store up food for next winter. I've read it dozens of times now. I can quote it verbatim probably.
Yeah.
Little Sal, you run along. Mama wants to pick blueberries for next winter. I've had to read it so many times, probably weekly. But diligence, I mean, that's what they're doing. They have to pick and store up, and little Sal wants to sit there and eat them, and Mama's saying no. The boy who cried wolf, the boy repeatedly lies about wolf attacks, and he loses credibility when a real wolf appears.
Right.
And what's interesting about this is that it's not just that you shouldn't tell lies, it's that liars are not believed even when they tell the truth.
Exactly. Yeah, that's something that we've had to talk about with the kids. When they've said something enough times, it's like you begin to not believe them. And so we've even used that term now. Like they'll use it with one another. Like, are you crying wolf? Or don't cry wolf, about this thing. Like you've cried too many times about this. Or maybe you haven't said quite exactly the truth on this.
Right.
And so, but they understand the term. They know the story. They have the context for it. And they're able to apply it without thinking.
Yeah.
So now, like in future times, things that may come up, or even hindsight, they'll be able to understand why maybe they don't trust this person. They'll have a context for it. So.
Yeah.
You said earlier not to count your chickens or your eggs before they hatch. We're not sure which. But that one comes from the milkmaid and her pail.
Oh.
So I'll just briefly, the milkmaid, she goes out to milk the cow. She fills it up with milk, her pail. She's walking home, and she's carrying the pail on her head, as they do. And she's thinking to herself, I've got all of this milk, and from this milk I'll get cream, and I'll use the cream to make butter, and I will take the butter and sell it, and I'll get eggs, and then I'll make them hatch, and I'll have chickens. I'll sell the chickens and have money for a dress, and I'll wear my dress to the fair, and all the boys will be looking at me, but I will toss my head at them. And as she's thinking this, she tosses her head, and there goes her pail of milk.
Oh, no.
And so it's in the moment of her pride.
Yeah.
In the very moment, the action of pride itself leads to the fall of the milk pail. So that ties it right back into the Proverbs of the pride comes before the fall. So there's lots of overlap.
Yeah, so she counted her chickens before they were hatched.
She did. She was counting lots of chickens, building all those dreams that she was having. And,
Yes.
and they're all spilled in a moment.
She didn't count her hatchlings before they were chickens.
Exactly.
She did, yeah. There's a Lion and the Mouse, where a lion spares a mouse, and then later on the lion is freed by the mouse gnawing the ropes.
Yeah.
So kindness now can yield kindness or rewards later. And this reminds me of C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia, where Aslan is bound up by ropes, and then the mice gnaw them away.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if Lewis had that in mind, but Lewis was deeply steeped in all this writing.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm sure he's drawing upon some of these stock examples from the past. This is a famous story.
Right. And did you know that that one has a sequel, that fable?
What is it?
There's one right after it. So that mouse who helps the lion, the lion's so grateful, and he says, if there's anything I can do for you, just, and the mouse thinks, and he's like, well, I'd like to have your daughter for my wife. And the lion's like, okay, buddy.
Yeah.
So he calls his daughter over, and she's all excited, and she comes and runs up and crushes the mouse because she doesn't even see him.
Yeah.
And the moral is basically, don't ask for something that you can't handle.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he asked above his abilities.
Above his pay grade.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, there's the wolf in sheep's clothing.
And then there's the donkey in the lion's clothing, right?
That's right. So
Yeah.
there's the wolf in sheep's clothing. A wolf disguises itself as sheep and infiltrates. So beware of people deceiving. And Jesus actually says this, beware of false prophets. They come to you as ravenous wolves. They come to you as sheep, but inwardly they're ravenous wolves. Matthew 7:15. It's exactly this parable or this fable.
Yeah,
Did Jesus read Aesop's Fables? This is amazing.
right.
The goose that laid the golden egg. So a story of a farmer who has a goose that lays golden eggs, and the farmer gets impatient and wants more of these golden eggs, so he kills the goose, hoping to cut it open and find the rest of the golden eggs, but there's none, because the goose just makes them as any normal goose would, normal eggs. So the moral is that greed destroys the source of good fortune. And I can't help but think of Willy Wonka's chocolate factory,
Right.
where that girl, I think her name was Veruca Salt,
Right.
they're in the room where the goose lays the golden egg, and she wants it now. I don't care how, I want it now. I want the world, I want the whole world. And she sings this song, and then she gets sucked down the tube thing. And I don't know where she ends up, probably
The
not in a good
garbage
place.
chute, I think.
Yeah. So the goose laid the golden, you have to wait. That whole scene, I think, was based upon Aesop's Fables.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
The necessity is the mother of invention. That one comes from the crow and the pitcher. Basically, there was a crow, he's dying of thirst. And he looks and he sees this pitcher, but it's a very tall, narrow pitcher. And he's just a crow. He can't get the water that's in there. So he's looking around. He's like, well, I'm going to die if I don't get the water. So he sees pebbles. And he gets his beak. He picks up the pebbles and he drops them in the pitcher one by one until the water rises to where he can get it. Any onlooker would be like, what in the world is this bird doing? You know, it can look insane, just like new inventions can be totally incomprehensible to someone who has no idea what it's for or something like that. But necessity is oftentimes what drives it, like in war. That happens, you know.
Right. A lot of inventions that we have today as civilians are developed by the military.
Right, because of the
war.
urgency that war gives to the inventions.
Yeah, and oftentimes people think, oh, it was Elon Musk that developed this, or it was Steve Jobs that invented this idea, when in reality, he may have had something to do with it, but there was also some military need behind it. This is the Wright brothers, for instance, when they began inventing airplanes. They didn't actually invent the idea of it. They began to invent the first ones that were actually flyable. And then immediately, militaries all over the world wanted to see this. So they started traveling. But the military got involved right away and began to improve upon this and modify it and adjust it. Before you know it, this was like 1906, 1903, 4, 5, and 19 teens, they're flying in war.
Right.
They're like, put a gun on it, put a bomb on it, they're using it. So that's probably not the best example because it wasn't entirely an invention, but just the improvement and the necessity of something forces this invention.
I think that happens a lot in anybody who lives a homesteader life. You know, that they're constantly having to come up with these small little, I don't know if they're inventions, but they're solutions, that they're having to come up with because they have the need right here and they can't drive way out to wherever to buy what it is they need. And they get creative. I mean, there are some clever solutions.
Yeah. There's the goat herd and the wild goats, though. I like that one. So basically, a goat herd is out with his goats, and a wild group of goats come along and join his group. And he takes them home because a storm comes along. He puts them all in the barn, and he feeds the wild goats more than his goats because he's wanting to convince them to stay. Things are going to be great. And the next day, he lets them all out to pasture, and the wild goats take off and run away again. And he gets angry and yells at them and says, I fed you well last night. And one of the goats turns around and responds and says, yeah, but you didn't feed your flock or your herd very well. And you're going to treat us the same way in the future if another group of goats, another wild group of goats comes along and replaces us. You'll treat us just like you treat your own, which isn't good. Yeah. And that, to me, parallels favoritism in politics and society, where Western governments particularly neglect their citizens in favor of newcomers. And this isn't something new that's happened, by the way. This has happened for a long, long time. This happens with politicians, newspapers, all kinds of immigrant relocation agencies. Then you get this with media, publications, think tanks, public figures. They love the foreigner, but they despise their neighbors so much.
Right.
G.K. Chesterton talked about this. These people who love humanity, but they hate their neighbors. They hate humans. If you ask them, do about sailors, if you ask them about priests, if you ask them about the coal miners, if you ask them about the policemen, they hate them all, but they love humanity. They love people far away. And sorry, I'm going on with this political stuff, but it's just the case here in this example with the goat herd and the wild goats. We mistreat our people next to us, the natives, our flock, our herd. But the foreigners come in like, oh, welcome, here's all kinds of goodies. And I think if I were someone coming into America today, I would want to know, how are the others treated who have been here for a while? Because it sounds real good now, but what about in a generation or two? How am I going to be treated then?
Okay, there's another one called The Old Man and Death. And basically there's an old man. He's out in the woods, he's working, and his burden is heavy. He's trying to make it home, but he's thinking, I'll just pray for death, end this, my burden is too much. And so he prays to be delivered, and then he sees death. Death comes and they're face to face, and he's like, you know what? Never mind. How about death here? You just help me pick up my burden again, and I'm going to go home instead. And the moral is how sorry we would be if many of our wishes were granted. And I couldn't help but think of the country song. Sometimes I thank God for unanswered prayer.
Garth Brooks.
Yeah, we think of all of the silly wishes that we've made in the past. Whether for possessions or relationships or big things or small, but we can look back and realize that it's better to just carry our burden rather than try to find an easy way out.
The fact that you don't always get what you pray for is sometimes a good thing.
Yeah.
And there are various stories about this too. Lewis's Voyage of the Dawn Treader, where they come to the land where all your dreams come true. They're in the darkness. They sail into this darkness, and this man tells them, turn around, turn around, turn around. You come to the land where all your dreams come true. And all the sailors think, oh, well, I would like that. I'd like to get my old wife back that died. I'd like to get my good leg back, or whatever, my bad leg. And he says, no, all your dreams come true. Yes, and they all freak out and turn around and get out of there. Because if you had everything you asked for, it might not be good.
Right.
Well, there's a few more here. One is the Town Mouse and the Country Mouse. And there are standalone books for this that are really good. I'll have to put a link in the description of the video or the podcast.
Yeah, there's one by Jan Brett. She's got her illustrations.
Okay, is that the one we have?
Yes, the one with the extra borders and things.
Kind of kitsch.
No, it's okay.
It is. It really is. It's like if you walked into, what's the place called?
Cracker Barrel.
Cracker Barrel, and just fell down and everything fell on top of you. It just, all that stuff.
All right, well, it's kitsch done well, all right?
It's kitsch. But the Town Mouse and Country Mouse, basically it's two mice, and they both are dissatisfied with where they live, and they think, I'm going to improve my lot. I'm going to go move out in the country. I'm going to move in the city. And they swap places. They meet each other along the way, and they swap. And they find out it's not so good, and they want to go back where they're from. So the grass is not always greener on the other side. That's the lesson.
The last one I have is called The Boy Bathing, and he's swimming. He's swimming in the water, but he goes out too deep. He finds himself where he's no longer comfortable. He can't swim very well, apparently. So he's crying out for help. A man comes along, hears him, and instead of actually offering a hand or trying to help the boy out of the water, he simply turns to him and starts scolding him. And he's saying, why are you in deep water? Why did you go out there? And the boy's like, oh, sir, please help me first and scold me afterwards, is what he says. And the moral of it is give assistance, not advice in a crisis.
Right.
And that has happened so many times where people are like, oh, I want to talk about this with you, or let me know if you want to talk. And it's like, actually help is a little bit more important now than talking about it, or than me getting your opinion on this,
Right.
And what immediately comes to mind for examples of this is how some of the evangelical elites have treated men in the church. They see them struggling. They see them in deep water. And instead of throwing them some kind of help or offering a hand, they get scolded.
Right.
And told all of these things that they need to do, but it's like, well, hold on, he's drowning.
Yeah.
Let's help him first. Yeah.
Let's help him. Yeah, it's tough. Well, I have two big themes from Aesop's Fables. One is that there are moral contradictions and nuances, and the other is that you should be true to yourself. Believe it or not, it's not something that was just made up. The moral contradictions and nuances, so basically the fables reflect real-world complexity, not merely a rigid moral code. It's not a list of absolutes that you're getting. You're getting stories with nothing else. So, for instance, there's an example of the horse and the stag, where vengeance leads to loss. And there's the story of the lion, the wolf, and the fox, where vengeance leads to success. So which is it? Are we being told that vengeance always leads to loss? Never take vengeance. But then you read a story where vengeance succeeds and it wins the day. Well, the point is that there are situations in life where playing one or the other is the proper course. And you should be wise and shrewd and know what to do. You need to be able to see things as they are in all of their nuances and grittiness. There's not a formula for morals. Now, sometimes, like murder's always wrong. But is it murder if you're defending yourself? Right. Is it accidental manslaughter or is it premeditated? There are differences all the time. And so we shouldn't take, for instance, a 5-second shaky YouTube video from a camera on someone's phone and render a moral verdict right away.
Exactly.
We should be careful and assess the situation as it really is. Another example is the story of the birds, the beasts, and the bat, where playing both sides fails. Someone who's not loyal ends up being treated as a traitor. But then there's another story called The Bat and the Weasels, where the main character plays both sides and succeeds. So, which is it? Again, Aesop is not giving us moral ambiguity. He's giving us real situational context and things that you would experience in your real life, where being loyal to a friend in one instance leads to ruin, and being loyal to another friend in another instance leads to moral righteousness. It's the correct thing.
I think Proverbs has a lot to say about friends on that one. Being very careful about how you choose your friends, because it's not always the same. These moral situations change based on who you're with, what you're doing, all these things.
Yeah.
And so we need those guides and principles to apply them when we're in those situations.
Yeah. So moral decisions require context. They require wisdom, discernment.
Yes. Yeah.
Aesop's fables are not these simple things. If you really read them, all of them, or read through them, for the most part, read dozens of them, I guess, you'll pick up this isn't as easy and simplistic and Mother Goosey or
Right.
Disneyfied as I was imagining. The next big theme is being true to yourself. I know it sounds cliche today, but there really is an emphasis in the fables on accepting one's nature and limits and not changing your identity and your appearance. So there's an example here, the donkey and the lapdog, where the donkey is beaten for trying to imitate the dog. He jumps up in his master's lap because he sees that's what the dog does. And I want to be petted like the dog. And so the donkey jumps on his master and the master beats him. Another example is the monkey and the camel, where the camel is ridiculed for trying to dance like the monkey, thinking, oh, that's going to bring me attention and happiness.
Yeah.
But it's not.
Right. Our natures have limits.
Yeah.
We have to know them. Yeah.
Another example is the donkey and the lion's skin, where the donkey wears a lion's skin, trying to be a lion, and he's exposed as a fake. And this is exactly the same story of C.S. Lewis's Last Battle.
Yes.
Where the ape convinces the donkey to wear the lion's skin and act like Aslan and destroy all of Narnia. It actually destroys the whole world. This one act of wearing the lion's skin and acting like something you're not. And this is so important, I think, especially in our day when people are trying on different identities, different appearances, changing their skin almost, if it could be so, changing their physical appearance, acting like something you're not. It's ruinous. You should be true to yourself in the sense of accepting your nature and your limits, not changing your identity and your appearance.
Right. It's become an existentialist idea of first defining yourself. You pick and choose what you want to be, and then that's what you get to be.
Right.
And then be true to it can also mean just however you may be feeling in that moment, being true to me rather than some principles that are outside of me that I have decided upon,
Yeah, so embrace your nature, not some fabricated identity.
Exactly, yeah.
Now, we're not saying be true to yourself in the sense of invent your own moral system and just go with it and betray everybody else around you. Just be true to yourself. That's not what we're saying. We're saying be true to your being. Mm-hmm. Be true to the logic of the belief system that you have.
Right.
That's objective to yourself, though. Socrates talked about this when he said the two most important points in philosophy is know yourself and be true to yourself. And Solzhenitsyn also talked about this when he said, don't betray yourself. Don't betray yourself. You have a belief system and you need to stick to it. You have a character and a nature and you need to be the best you can be. It doesn't mean accept yourself as you are and just go along. Like, you can improve yourself.
Right.
But don't change from what you are fundamentally. Be the best you can be, but stick to the inner logic of your belief system.
Right. Don't go against your nature.
Don't go against it.
Right. But that entails the idea that there are multiple natures. Using animals keeps it safe. Like, oh, look at these silly animals with their antics. But when you're applying it to people, you have to realize that people have different natures, have different limits as people.
We do.
Yeah.
And you try to become somebody else. You're faking it.
Right.
There was a song long ago by Avril Lavigne.
Oh.
Do you remember her?
Yes.
One of her famous songs, I think, was something about how she's angry with some guy because he's faking it.
Complicated.
You're not being yourself. Mm-hmm. That's what she was saying. You're faking it. You're acting like you're somebody else.
Right.
I'm so frustrated or something. I can't remember the lyrics.
Close enough.
Yeah, something like that. She was frustrated, and there's an emphasis on being authentic and genuine and real.
Yes, yeah.
And that, I think, there's people will laugh at that today, but there's something to that when we live in an age where you can pick and choose your identity all the time. Mm-hmm. You can go to one store and just change your complete identity by the clothes you wear, and then you're tired of that and you go to some other store. You can pick and choose your friend group when you go to a big high school of hundreds of people in your class. Mm-hmm. You can pick and choose your identity. And what she's saying in the song, yes, I'm trying to make the song sound profound, but what you should do is be true to who you are. Well, what does that look like? First of all, you should be true to what you are as a human being, as a creature in God's image. And if you're a Christian, you should be true to Christ. You should be true to the nature and the situation in which you find yourself.
Yeah, you don't get to be multiple people.
Right.
That sounds funny, but that is a temptation, I think, for young people a lot, that you're someone at home, you're someone at church, you're someone at school, you're someone at work.
Right.
You're all of these different people. And a lot of times these people from different scenarios wouldn't recognize you as the other person.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. The Fables prompt you to have some psychological contemplations.
You're right, they do.
They can go deep. This is what we mean when we say they're not just for children. Mm-hmm. They are preemptive moral thinking. They're post moral thinking after events happen. Hindsight application. Mm-hmm. The Fables have inspired so many different adaptations. Disney has taken off with moral tales of rabbits and birds and all kinds of things. Looney Tunes. I know you don't like my Looney Tunes references. Tom and Jerry. Mm-hmm. Cat and the Mouse, but they really are timeless wisdom. They're applicable to personal, social, political contexts. I can see why Aesop's fables have shaped moral discourse for millennia. They have. It's funny, isn't it? You got some PhD in a university right now who's really smart in the 21st century, and no one's ever going to know what that person said. And you got Aesop fables writing about crows and birds stuff long ago, and it's influenced language for thousands of years. Mm. You should read Aesop's fables before you study some deep philosophy. Seriously, you're going to remember that more than the philosophy book. Mm-hmm. There's a simplicity, a brevity, and a memorability to them. Maybe because they're short, because they have animals that make them accessible for all ages. But the fables are realistic and portray a nuanced view of morality that's way better than the simplistic platitudes that we get, especially from people online, politicians, Christians, just secular people who say really simplistic slogan type phrases that lets everybody know that you're signaling the right views.
It's very cookie cutter.
Right. And the Aesop's fables don't do that.
Right.
They provide complexities to help you navigate real life with discernment. Thank you for listening. If you're enjoying this content, please consider supporting the show by subscribing at arslibri.substack.com. Your support enables me to produce this content. Subscribers also get bonus episodes, detailed book lists, and more. I encourage you to pick up the copy that we mentioned. Barnes & Noble has one. Barnes & Noble's Barnes.
Any copy's fine.
All right, I won't say that. I'll just keep it from there. All right, we'll stop. So basically, a goat herd is out with his herd. Dang it, I can't let. Basically, a goat herd is out shepherding his flock. I can't. So basically, a goat herd is out with his goats, and a wild group of goats come along and join his group.